Hi, my name is Schroeder. I'm from the University of New Mexico, and today I'm going to be presenting on some research that I've done in collaboration with Nathan Van Dranken from Eastern College on the impact of flight adaptive traits on niche partitioning in carnivorous non-avian theropods. So as a quick primer for the competitive interactions, we're going to be discussing ontogenic niche shift is an approach to growth that subdivides a species ecologically at any number of growth stages. In how or what or where they're eating or existing. And this is especially common among animals that lack parental care and have, more importantly, large disparities between adult and neonate body mass, such as non-avian dinosaurs. So I and other authors have suggested that ontogenetic niche shifts, particularly in carnivorous dinosaurs, may be contributing to the lack of medium size, that is, carnivorous dinosaurs between 100 and 1,000 kilograms, lack of these dinosaurs in communities. Essentially, we argue that the juveniles of megatheropods usurp the feeding niche of medium-sized carnivorous dinosaurs. And we see evidence of this interaction in a large majority of communities in the Cretaceous and Jurassic. While we observe gaps in carnivore body size distributions in many communities, that's not to say that medium-sized carnivorous dinosaurs don't exist. Many exist in communities lacking megatheropods, and indeed, some exist in communities with megatheropods, such as Dakotaraptor steini in the Hell Creek. And if our hypothesis regarding competition with juvenile megatheropods is correct, we would expect to observe the effects of competition in these medium-sized carnivores that are co-occurring with megatheropods. So in modern ecosystems, we observe a number of effects from competition. For example, we see things like low population densities in African wild dogs, which are in direct competition with African lions and spotted hyenas. And in response to this, African wild dogs developed this really expanded hunting range and really impressive pursuit hunting capabilities. Competition can also drive the diversification of food acquisition traits. And somewhat counterintuitively, it can also deflate speciation. So you can get a diversification of certain traits, and at the same time, or in different instances, you can get a deflation of speciation. So this last point is particularly interesting when we look again at those medium-sized carnivores, because quite a few of the medium-sized carnivores that we see in ecosystems are para-avians, which we know were particularly diverse, especially in the Cretaceous. But a lot of that para-avian diversification is arguably due to adaptations that later became essential for flight. Things like small body size, gracile body plans, feathered limbs, these all increase the potential for ecological release through vertical niche partitioning, through dispersal. Effectively, it's opening up the trees to dinosaurs. So if small para-avians were super successful, why is it that some lineages are driven towards larger size? And once they get to those larger sizes, how are giant para-avians co-occurring with megatheropods? So our first question is, what is the benefit of large size in para-avians? And we think that this has to do with cursoriality. We think that larger body size is effectively increasing cursoriality, allowing some space between the niches of the giant para-avians and smaller para-avians. So to address this question, we collected limb lengths for 25 non-volant and 37 volant para-avians, as well as 18 carnivorous and 51 herbivorous non-para-avian dinosaurs. And we used prior published analyses. So we looked at sprinting capacity, running speed, cursorial limb proportion, and cost of transport. And we used all of these to try and compare and contrast trends in volant and non-volant para-avians. And what we found, so beginning with sprinting capacity, this is femur strength, this indicated that sprinting capacity decreased with size in volant para-avians, which is kind of interesting since we might expect it to increase in order to support increased body size. But what we think this might be demonstrating is actually launch strength. So these smaller non-volant para-avians might have increased femur strength for that initial jump off the ground before actually flying. Alternatively, these are fairly small specimens. Postmortem crushing is fairly common. This might be a byproduct of taphonomy. In the non-volant para-avians, we didn't find any significant trend between body size and sprinting capacity. So in general, it doesn't seem that being bigger improves your sprinting ability for para-avians. General running ability, as examined by cursorial limb proportion, is developed by Persons and Curie. So basically here we have the percent deviation from an expected cursorial limb proportion for theropods in the left-hand graph and para-avians in the right-hand graph. So deviation in these graphs above the black line indicates that the limbs are adapted for running. So while we see that para-avians in general are more cursorially adapted than most theropods, this trend is not body size dependent. We do note two things in particular, however, that of all the para-avians, all of them that fall below the cursorial limb proportions for theropods, all of them that are below are volant. So this is somewhat, obvious. If you're flying, you don't need to run as well, right? But it's interesting that our results found that. Giant para-avians, on the other hand, do not tend to be particularly well adapted to cursoriality when compared to other para-avians. When we examine running speeds, this is where everything gets really interesting. In general, running speeds increase with body size, which we see in this black solid line right here. However, above about 30 kilograms in body mass, we start to see a deviation from this increase with body size. At about 30 kilograms, we fall below the 95% confidence interval. And this result, this plateau basically indicates that we can't simply scale up the running abilities of smaller para-avians when we're comparing them to their giant cousins. The larger animals, their top running speeds really do not continue to increase, as we would expect if we just scaled up the running speeds relative to body size from these smaller cousins. So conversely, when we looked at the energetic cost that is incurred while running, when we looked at this in non-volant para-avians and non-para-avian theropods, we found that carnivorous theropods, again over 30 kilograms, were more efficient than smaller species. So therefore, in general, smaller non-volant para-avians, the ones that are between about 10 and 30 kilograms, they're pretty analogous to modern rapid pursuit hunters, things like cheetahs. They are utilizing relatively high speeds over short periods of time or short distances to capture their prey. Whereas large para-avians and non-para-avian carnivores like tyrannosaurs, these were more analogous to modern persistence hunters, things like wolves, wild dogs. They are utilizing increased relative efficiency to slowly pursue prey over long distances. So we've identified two ways in which body size may have potentially separated the feeding niche of small and large para-avians, but these also happen to be two ways in which giant para-avians seem to overlap with megatheropods. So this brings us to our second question. Since these giant para-avians seem to be overlapping in niche and ecology, do they show the effects of competition with megatheropods when they're co-occurring in ecosystems? And our hypothesis is that the para-avians that are occurring in these medium-sized carnivore niches, i.e. our giant para-avians, when in the presence of megatheropods, will show depressed population densities. So here we have gray boxes showing the potential competitive overlap of carnivorous dinosaurs in two different ecosystems. Basically, the darker the gray, the more competition for any prey item within that area. Based on our calculation of likely prey size and predator running ability, when we look at the yellowcat member of the Cedar Mountain Formation, this actually contains prey items that may have only been possible to have been hunted by Utah raptor. Interestingly, in these two communities, both of which lack megatheropods, the relative abundance of our giant para-avians is not particularly low. So we've got approximately 60% of the specimens found in the yellowcat member are from Utah. 60% of the carnivorous specimens found are of Utah raptor, and similarly, 25% from the Allen assemblage are from Ositaraptor, our giant para-avian. when we compare those to two assemblages that do have megatheropods, we suddenly see that the relative abundance of giant paraavians drops by over an order of magnitude. So we went from 60% and 25% in Cedar Mountain and Allen to 0.6% and 1% in Hell Creek and Baneshare. So granted, this is a very rough way of estimating relative abundance. And also a huge caveat, we have not actually tested whether this abundance is a real direct result of competition. That is something that needs to be studied further, and we very much encourage people to go out and do that. But I would say that it is telling that despite over 100 years of collection, excavation, examination of the Hell Creek, an animal the size of Dakota raptor, which is not a small animal, an animal that size has been found once in over 100 years of collection. It's telling that that thing is so rare. So it's also interesting that when we look at the overall diversity, remember that an effect of competition can be deflated speciation. It's really interesting that of all of the paraavians, only less than 10% of the diversity of paraavians is found in giants. So while the relative abundance of giant paraavians, like I said, certainly requires more testing, this result might be demonstrative of competition with megatheropods. And very much like modern African wild dogs, giant paraavians, like Dakota raptor, might have been relying on their exceptionally efficient running abilities to pursue prey away from larger co-occurring predators. This might have enabled it to remain in the Hell Creek with Tyrannosaurus rex, despite incurring quite a bit of competition from juveniles. So with that, I would like to note that I did not have the time to go through all of what we studied with this paper. I would also like to thank very much my co-author, co-first author on this paper, Nathan Van Branken. And with that, I am happy to hear your questions and comments.